Is Abigail Mela. I am the host of today's show, and I'm very excited to be joined by our two guests. Stacy Smedley is the Executive Director of Building Transparency, and Panu is the CEO and founder of One-Click LCA. Welcome. Good to see you both.
Thank you.
Before we begin, I have a bit of housekeeping before we dive into the show. So April, go ahead and share the slides. Thank you. I'm excited to kick off by letting all of you know that registration is now open for One-Click LCA's Digital Summer Sustainability Summit 2024. We're focusing on sustainable construction and manufacturing, and the summit is relevant for architecture, engineering, construction, manufacturing, and sustainability professionals. So over 2 days, from June 5th to June 6th, the summit will bring together over 2,000 digital guests from across the world. It's 100% free to register, 100% online, and don't worry if events take place outside of your time zone. Just register and you can access them on demand after the event. The summit includes 14 keynotes, panels, and talks with global speakers. This includes the CEO of the World Green Building Council, Sustainability Platform Strategy at Autodesk, VP Sustainability at Schneider Electric, the CBRE Head of Sustainability, EMEA, and Director of Sustainable Business Development at Saint-Gobain. Register today. This is an exciting 2-day event in early June. And let's go on with the show. So, Carbon Experts Live is a show brought to you by One-Click LCA. We're joined by Building Transparency Executive Director Stacy Smedley, One-Click LCA CEO and founder Panu. And they're going to discuss today's explosion of AEC sustainability data, how the industry and professionals can deal with it, and what can be done to help. This episode is of interest to any AEC professionals who need to incorporate sustainability data into their work. And with new and upcoming regulation increasingly demanding environmental impact factors to be considered, I think this includes probably all of you in the field. This will be an interesting talk and highly relevant. Next slide. I have quite exciting news before we kick off for those of you who have not yet heard, but on April 16th, 2024, Building Transparency and One-Click LCA announced their strategic partnership to provide access to the data needed to drive carbon action and decarbonize built spaces. So both of the organizations are coming together to provide high value and actionable data for users to support sustainability goals on their project. And through this partnership, Building Transparency and One-Click LCA will improve the flow of environmental data and create a robust ecosystem of tools needed to drive carbon reductions. And in today's talk, Stacy and Panu will also discuss the partnership and what this means for all of you in the audience today. As a quick reminder, today's episode is brought to you by One-Click LCA. This is the global LCA software empowering the industry to decarbonize and get sustainable. With it, you can comply with more than 80 national regulations, standards, and certifications. You can access the world's largest construction LCA database and bring LCA into your existing workflow with more than 20 BIM and other integrations to make your sustainability calculations faster and easier. One-Click LCA is here to make the construction value chain sustainable, and you can learn more about One-Click LCA at oneclicklca.com. Up next. I'd like to give a quick nod to the production team. I'm your host, Abigail. April, Melina, and Aileen are working behind the scenes to make this episode possible. And we are also hosting a live Q&A session at the end of today's show. This gives you the chance to ask Stacy and Panu your most burning questions, and our production team will be piping all of your questions to Stacy and Panu at the end of the show. So stick around until the end of the show. And if you are dialing in today from LinkedIn Live or from Livestorm, go ahead and start dropping all of your burning questions now, so these can be piped over to Stacy and Panu. It's first come, first serve. Thank you very much. Next. I'd like to introduce you to Stacy. She's the Executive Director of Building Transparency, where she champions broad and swift climate action across the building design and construction industry. And she works to facilitate the reduction of embodied carbon through open access to sustainability data and tools. She has 20 years of experience supporting sustainability efforts across the built environment, and she leads Building Transparency and managing the continued development and implementation of the embodied carbon in construction calculator, otherwise known as EC3, and also Tally LCA. She's a leader in climate policy advocacy, partnering with local, state, federal, and global policymakers to inform and support low carbon procurement and buy clean policies. She's driven by her passion for sustainability and architecture, and she's an active contributor to the building community on a global scale. She also has a very active following on LinkedIn, 14,000 followers. I encourage you to follow her. She's doing a very cool series where she drops a new post every single day this year, focusing on climate action. So follow Stacy. And next slide, April. Great. Panu is the CEO and sole founder of OneClick LCA, which is a world-leading software platform for life cycle assessment and environmental product declaration in construction and manufacturing. He's a lifelong advocate for the decarbonization of the built environment and a winner of the EY 2023 Tech Award for his significant contribution to the industry. He is an LCA, embodied carbon, and life cycle costing expert and entrepreneur, and he also works on green building credits. His life's work is to scale carbon performance optimization with easy, automated, user-friendly, and affordable LCA and LCC software. He has 10,000 followers on LinkedIn, and I also enjoy following Panu on LinkedIn. You're encouraged to do the same. And I wanted to thank both you, Stacy, and Panu for being here. Let's now cut from the slides and get on with the conversation. Okay, great. A silent audience or a silent crowd. We can just dive in. So, Stacy, I'll direct the first question to you. What is the tidal wave of sustainability data, and what's causing it?
That's a very big question, and I think when Panu and I were speaking about what we wanted to talk about today, it seems like the urgent question that needs to be answered for many sustainability professionals out there today. There's a few things that I think have happened just in the past, I would say 5 years when it comes to sustainability data in general, but more particularly embodied carbon and life cycle assessment data, which I think is where Panu and I sit. And a lot of it is, I think, the ability for those of us that have gotten literate in this data early, being out there and creating tools and avenues for education and accessibility. And I would say that Building Transparency and OneClick are both in a position where we have been trying to lead that work and bring everyone along. So I think just the ability for word of mouth to happen, for people to start talking about it and explaining it to each other has been something that we've seen, at least in Building Transparency's work. The other is just the fact that I think we're all experiencing climate impacts way more directly than we did in the past. And people that are in industries like the building sector, where we now are literate in climate, understand our role in reducing carbon impacts and other impacts. We see our role that we have to play if we're going to have a planet that we all want to live on and that we want our kids to experience over the next decades.
Yeah, absolutely. And so maybe to follow or build on that, so why do we have this tidal wave or influx or mass of data coming up? Is because sustainability used to be something you manage with certifications. So have a label here, label there, makes you feel good, but that's not enough, right? So similarly to money, you need to account for it and you need to budget it and you need to try to find improvements. So data is the necessary enabler for that, and we have this flow of data coming because people want to be able to do credible measures and not just to collect labels and stickers for having done, good things, but they want to prove that we actually achieved something that's meaningful and that's sustainable. And this kind of measurability, it increases substantially the investability of the decarbonization. So people will be way more willing, to support the project financially that's able to demonstrate a gain in terms of decarbonization versus a project that's just collecting various different labels of, well, I mean, labels can be good too, right? But labels for sustainability. So that's creating the flow of data from where I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, picking up on that, Panu, I think because I started as someone that was looking for the data, that point about not just wanting to have a piece of paper that told me someone disclosed something, but trying to find the actual data that I could use, like costs, to compare and find, the lowest carbon, the best sustainability performing product, was really what led to the work that I'm now doing at Building Transparency. Because I was hungry for that data that I could actually use in that way. And not just feel good about having a collection of PDF documents that said the promise that those companies had done well. So I really take that point.
And the second thing that's of course driving this is that businesses are concerned that their products are not investable, like that somebody might not want to specify them, somebody might not want to buy them, so that you get locked out of the market. So the transition from this label collection is also a risk for manufacturers who don't want to, prove with data where they stand with regard to performance, and it's only going to go up.
Yeah, we're seeing that already, right, with the different regulations that Abigail mentioned. I think both here in North America where I sit, but also in Europe, just around mandatory disclosure now, but then also leveraging the disclosure to set thresholds or limits. And if you don't comply with the threshold or limit, if you're above in terms of carbon emissions, for example, here in the States, then you just can't be procured. And I think that message to manufacturers, and then also investment in helping them to decarbonize is happening now. And we can point to those things happening versus just maybe talking and hoping about those things happening a handful of years ago.
Yeah, thank you, Stacy. I think at this point, it would be quite interesting maybe to learn a bit more about the Building Transparency backstory and also One-Click LCA's backstory to provide some context for everyone in the audience to understand the forthcoming questions. So April, if you would cue up the introduction to Building Transparency, and let's turn it over to Stacy.
Sure. Yeah. And I always start with introduction to myself because I think we are what we do. So this is a slide that's just showing, first of all, a picture of me on my grandpa's lap and with my grandmother on the deck of our house. I was in rural Clackamas, Oregon. And I grew up there. He built a house on the land and I watched him build the house. And then I basically had this natural playground outside all the time where I could go out and I would be in nature. And when I was 8, he decided to sell off all of our land, which is the green area kind of below that blue dot on the left. And I watched from that same deck as it was clear cut and turned into a suburban housing development, which was typical kind of in the US at that time. And I told my mom I was going to build things that didn't destroy nature one day. So I have taken that through all the work that I've done in architecture and construction to the work at Building Transparency. And it was, again, in that role at Skanska, if you go to the next slide, where, to Panu's point, I was trying to find a way to get to metrics where I could look at carbon intensity like I could look at cost. And that led me down a path of looking through the data and finding environmental product declarations, which are third-party verified declarations that were just being used as checkboxes. But I found that magical carbon intensity per unit that I was looking for to do carbon accounting like we were doing cost accounting. And Skanska was generous enough to have a program where we could actually get innovation grants to test new ideas. And I thought it would be amazing for me, but also maybe others, if we could digitize all of this data into a standard format in a standard place and provide access to it to really help everyone begin to understand that they could compare on carbon like they did on cost. So if you go to the next slide, Building Transparency is a 501c3 that was launched in 2020 to really take on the tool that I incubated at Skanska with over 50 industry partners, and the Carbon Leadership Forum here in Seattle helped incubate the tool. But it was a landing place for that database of EPDs that was open and accessible tool that was supposed to be kind of an entry point to this data. And now the mission of the nonprofit is really to provide open access to that data, the free tools that are necessary to help people get going in this work, and then collaboration with everyone else that's doing this work so that we can all be on the same speeding train versus separate ones kind of running next to each other. So Building Transparency does host EC3. I'm very excited about our partnership with One-Click to help move the data back and forth from OneClick's ability to generate EPDs into EC3's database and then back to OneClick for use in their in your large data set. And also Tally LCA was something that was donated to us by Kieran Timberlake, which is a Revit plugin that does lifecycle assessment that we continue to support. So really, we're here to partner and do things like today where we're talking to industry with our partners and really push that collaboration and bring all of this along. And the next slide I just show, because I'm very proud of what we've done in terms of fostering those partnerships and working with folks across the industry, whether you're an owner, architect, engineer, contractor, other tool platform, other data provider, manufacturer. So I'm proud of our work in this, but really the slide for me is to really show everyone that may be listening that no matter where you sit in this whole ecosystem of players, there is a role for you to play in setting the policies and being literate in this work and in actually taking action. So I'll stop there. I don't want to spend too much time just talking, but I hope that helps just give a little perspective on why I do what I do, but also what building transparency's role is in everything.
Thank you for providing that information, Stacy. It's really interesting, actually, to learn more about you. And April, if you would cue the slides for Panu, please. Thank you.
Thanks. So maybe in a similar sense, so how we look at what we're trying to do is that we are trying to transform the business data that companies have, cost plans, BIM models, data in ERPs and similar. We are trying to transform that into sustainability results, and those sustainability results that will be in the format that customers need. So you need different standards in different locations, different certifications require different things, and trying to make that as automated as possible, that you have time to iterate, because time is really critical. So if it takes you too much time, you're going to be able to just account the actual facts and not to run optioneering and trying to identify improvements. So that's how we look at what our job is as a company. Next, please. And we do life cycle assessment, so maybe the more complex end of carbon in general. And there's a couple of things which industry broadly has acknowledged problems. The data is one we definitely tackle together with building transparency. So we are pulling data together, trying to make sure it's consistent. And we are also, from our side, we are filling data gaps. So we are creating a lot of data. So we are also simplifying the complexity of LCA. Much of that is process design, software design, user information, interface design, automation to reduce the workload, with any possible BIM tool that you might be using or wanting to use, for example. And then this standards fragmentation is sort of inevitable because different countries have different regulations and right to write their own regulations. So what we want to be making sure is that no matter where you work, you can achieve the desired results. And next, please. So we work with 3 industries, or maybe just 2, depending how you split construction. So we work with buildings, we work with infrastructure, any kind of more and more data centers, power networks, rail and such, and manufacturing. And my own background actually is in manufacturing in way back where I started, and I'm happy to be going back there as well. So we work with a lot of especially advanced manufacturing in construction industry. Next, please. And the last point I want to make is that carbon accounting is not a value as such, right? Decarbonization is. And the place where we can decarbonize is early on, right? And that requires that you need to look at what you can achieve, that you set a target, you set a carbon budget, you write a requirement that the project has to account for carbon across the various steps, and moving to the left, moving early in the project phase is critical, and that's what we have been doing and investing in over the past couple of years, and we continue. While, of course, it's very important to account for achieving the targeted results. So you cannot just set a target and hope it will be achieved. You need to both set the target and police the project and make sure the suppliers are accountable for achieving those results. I think that's that would be the short summary of what we are trying to achieve as a company. And there's some background noise coming from someone, but I will mute myself at least in case it's me.
Thank you, Panu. So we're talking about riding the tidal wave of AEC sustainability data. And maybe the first question I would pose to both of you, maybe Panu, you can start, is do people even understand this data? Yeah, there's an influx, but do people understand it?
Well, yes and no. Like carbon, sort of. Like decimal numbers, it's not like you don't have logarithmic scales, you don't have imaginary numbers. Normal engineers understand these things. Number is a number. Okay, how is the number achieved to? That gets a bit more tricky. So there's a fair amount of confusion about, let's say, between data that might be inconsistent. Some standards vary, and some data is accounted a bit differently. As an example, biogenic carbon that's embedded in product may be deducted from the carbon footprint of a product, and in some cases and not in others. And that kind of inconsistency is, of course, pretty harmful for comparison and understandability as well.
Right.
So I would say yes and no.
Yeah, I'm just going to pick up on that, Panu, because again, I started in a place where I didn't understand this data when I was looking for it. And I agree with you. There's layers to this, and I think I always use the analogy that it's like you're peeling back the layers of an onion, and it's painful, and your eyes might water, and you peel back one layer, and you think you're done, and there's another layer. And with the data we're dealing with, it's the same way. So I agree. We can take those carbon intensity values, especially, and be able to start leveraging them. But I think the next thing that's a responsibility of us that are data providers, but also the educators. I think it's wonderful, the different webinars and your LCA school where we're actually out there teaching others about this work. It's our responsibility now to help them understand what they need to ask for when it comes to the data that's going in to creating those numbers and the specificity of it and the comparability of it. And we could talk probably for hours on that, but I would say to everyone listening, the first thing to do is understand what we're talking about with embodied carbon and life cycle assessment. The next is to really start to dig into the data sources you're using and understand the quality and the specificity of that data. And again, I think both OneClick and Building Transparency are in roles where we're trying to help folks do that through how we present the data in our tools and in the databases that we provide. So don't be scared. It's okay if you don't know everything yet. I think getting all the way to biogenic carbon, I think I'm finally there after 5 years to understand that, but it's just where we are along that journey. We need to start looking at the types of data that we're comparing and using.
Yeah. So maybe to follow on that, so there's two sides of this data equation. So there's the manufacturers, and then there's the data consumers, let's say. And from a manufacturer point of view, they may have a temptation to make certain claims or put some data out if they don't feel that they're going to get caught. They don't feel there's a liability. So if people don't understand it, you can greenwash. I think we are past that point. Nowadays, you will get caught. I mean, the market is not consisting of foolish people, and internet being quite effective medium at identifying this kind of and sharing knowledge about this kind of abuse. The risk is very high for manufacturers, but there's still some onus on the user of the data to understand if the data is self-declared or if it's actually been third-party verified, and that kind of thing we still see. But I think the liability risk for manufacturers is growing so much that in a couple of years' time we will not see much. Let's say we will not see much. What do you call misrepresentation on that front? So today we still can see some of it, but I think the quality standards will go up on all the data just because it's going to be manufacturers' self-interest to do so. I mean, they don't want to get exposed to litigation or issues because of data quality.
Agreed.
All right.
I could keep going on this question, Abigail, but I don't know if we have time or if we need to move to the
I
next
think
one.
we have time. I was going to ask if you have any final thoughts on people understanding this data.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've been engaged in most recently is trying to help policymakers understand this data to then be able to put out requirements to actually better it. So I guess I would say, I think we're all on this journey together, but on the policy side, if we can get them to do some of the things that we're seeing happen with the Environmental Protection Agency, for instance, in the United States, where they're putting out guidelines about how the data needs to improve to have rigorous environmental product declarations with certain disclosures and credible background databases that are consistent, and words that we've helped them understand, and statements that they've learned, I think, through the community of us that have helped bring them along. Those policies will be another signal to those manufacturers that they need to start to actually disclose consistently in a way that's going to be credible, but also comply with the policies that are going to require it. And Panu, I think, one of the things I've been thinking about recently is we're seeing all this work happening in Europe around the construction product rules and anti-greenwashing type of policies and what's going on with the states. And I think one of the things our partnership could help do is try to figure out how to bring folks together to be consistent, get more consistent in some of these policies, and not try to be duplicative. And that will also help people understand the data if we're not asking them to disclose in 20 different ways.
Absolutely.
So this might lead to the next question, which is simply, how can the AEC industry cope with this data? I'll leave this for Panu to answer first.
Well, I think we need a basic literacy for everybody who makes substantial product decisions autonomously. So that level, it doesn't require 5 years to upskill and so on. You can pick up that level of competence with much lower effort. Now then you need a certain person probably within some projects or within a larger organization who understands a bit more, who can be, let's say, your sustainability go-to person. So you always will need 2 layers. And obviously we then, in our role of a, data provider and tool provider, we put quite a bit of effort to put data to the users in an interface which shows in a highly standardized way. Has this data actually been third-party verified? What standards does it follow? What characterization models and many other things does it apply? So that it's possible to understand with a snapshot, let's say, what has certain data point eaten. And that is a layer that is broadly accessible to the whole market. But then if you need somebody to really inspect things, that probably is not within the reach of every professional, but maybe every more mature company.
And I would second that. I think there's the first layer of literacy can be broadly digested by many folks at the company. We see this, even in my watching the growth of the Skanska sustainability team, or some of our partners, architecture partners, that started with 1 or 2 that were championing things and getting literate, and then that expanded to a whole team of 8. And now they have 1 person that's the carbon expert or the LCA expert that's really digging into the details. So I think, building the expertise within yourself and within your company, and building that bench of folks that can do kind of the low-hanging fruit stuff, and then having, like Panu said, the experts. I think one of the biggest problems we have right now is that we don't have enough programs in colleges or programs like what OneClick does with their summer series to help people get smart in this and have the confidence to be the expert. So I think we have a little bit of a desert when it comes to that expert layer. And so I would just, if anyone's interested in this work, becoming the expert so that you can support this at that second layer would be something I would advocate for. We need to build more experts. I think that's one way that we can cope with the data.
Yeah, of course. And every expert can probably support another 100 or 200 non-experts. So, it's high leverage point in the industry. Other thing to look at, because I will come back to the same thing. I've been talking about this for the past 20 years, but the data is not the point. The decarbonization is the point. So you don't need to understand everything. You just need to be confident that, this is going to have the impact that I want, right? If it's 5% less or 5% more, who cares? The point is to go into the right direction, do that repeatedly, do that often, and do it early. And sometimes, something goes wrong. Maybe, the contractor changes the product they buy in the end. So your accounting was all good, but they didn't buy what you specified in the end happens, right? It's life. And you cannot control for those factors. So you just need to do the motions, go through the motions. It's a bit like you go to the gym, you go there 3 times a week, couple of years in, you'll be in a perfect shape, but not every day will be a good day.
I completely agree with that. It's a good analogy. Anyway, I might steal that one because I love analogies to help people think about this stuff. But I agree that we need to continue to push and think about this more as a journey. I use that speeding train analogy, where the first thing you have to do is get on the train. And then, the next step is, are you going to help build the tracks that keep the train going? And how do you get more folks to get on the train? So I think we're in the middle of that now. And it's just, let's go get more people on the train and moving up in the cabooses till they're in the front, driving it.
Yeah.
So we've looked at a macro level at what the industry can do to cope with the data. And maybe let's zero in a little bit on actual professionals working in the trenches day to day, and what can they specifically do to deal with this data. So get technical and get specific.
I think, Panu, you started this in your last answer, I think, where you talked about just going through the process. So, and not worrying about perfection. Like, is it going to be everything happens correctly every time, or are the numbers exactly what happened at the end of the day? So getting technical, I think, find the tool that works for you, that helps you go through that process. Leverage that tool in how you design early, and maybe it's multiple tools that you use, but I think figuring out what your process is and then implementing it. Like when you said, now I'm going to use this analogy, you condition yourself where it just becomes what you do every day and it's what you know. So, beyond just understanding what the data is, I think understanding the tools that are out there, we always are pretty agnostic about this at BT. There's multiple tools out there. There's leading tools like OneClick, and what Panu's been able to build over the past 20 years. There are tools that are coming on the market that just look at one aspect of this if you're wanting to just look at the early stuff. So find the tools that work for you, implement them, and then go through the motions. And you will lead to decarbonization in that work, even if you don't know if it's 20% or 25%, to Panu's point.
Yeah. Second thing I would encourage is that look at the carbon budget. So what could be the allowed carbon emissions of a project? So don't start with the project as a given, but look at carbon as a target. So what could you actually, get? There's a couple of these carbon budget references. You can get them from Science Based Targets Initiative or others. You can get them from LETI for London. Some other geographies have different ones. Obviously, if you are in a highly seismic region, seismically stable regions, reference values probably will be a bit on the low end for you in very practical terms. But try to think of first, before you think of any very detailed things, just carbon budget. What's allowable? What would be actually sustainable? It's probably going to be way less than what you're going to get with your building. And then start to think about what can you do, and then look for the data on those things that you could do. Because, if you're going to build a certain type of building and you only can build it in one way for the given site or for a given context, then, there's no point to look at completely different alternatives. For example, if your location doesn't have only has supply for ready mix, but not precast, then you're pretty much locked out of that. So then you're going to be looking at the options within that technology or material supply that you can get in your region. And then look at the data within that scope. So don't start with very broad things, but I would say look at it from the finality point of view. That's how I would go about it. And yeah, sure, tools can help, but the most important is the thinking process. And again, start early.
I think the one other thing that we have told folks that are just getting into this and trying to wrap their heads around everything they could do, if you think about a building or an infrastructure project, but more particularly a building, is just the amount of materials that you're looking at, and how do I aggregate all of that to make decisions that I know are decarbonizing. what I'm designing or building. So you don't have to look at everything. I guess that's the other point I would make. You can start with the things that you know are heavy emitters or heavy hitters, structure, enclosure, and maybe tackle those first, and know once you've got that kind of literacy and you've know the levers to pull on your buildings and in those categories, then move on to other things, maybe interiors or MEP is a big question mark that I know OneClick's working on as well to try to fill the data gap. But again, I think don't feel like you have to do everything, even in terms of the scope of what you're looking at. Focus your attention on where the decarbonization impact is the biggest first.
So I think I gave you an opportunity to each talk about your tools, and I think you both kind of diplomatically declined to promote, one-click LCAs or building transparency's tools, which I think is nice. But it does lead to the next question, which I've seen floating around the internet and on LinkedIn. And I think one of the reasons that this episode had such great interest is because people are wondering, are building transparency and one-click LCA in competition? And I know that the partnership was recently announced, but maybe you could address this space and shed light. Stacy, I'll pass it to you first.
Okay, yeah, and I will say I get this question. This is probably the question I get the most often, if I'm being honest, especially when we're looking at we're talking to folks outside of North America. But even more so in North America now, as I think OneClick continues to try to expand, which I think is good. So I wanted to have this question as part of this webinar because I think it's a chance for both Panu and I to address it head on. In my perspective is that there is so much to do that if we all think that we're going to be the solution for everything, that we are not going to actually get to the point that we all are trying to, which is decarbonizing the built environment. And so, building transparency's perspective is OneClick is a tool that is leading in the industry when it comes to providing accessibility to this to practitioners. We support that. What we do at EC3 is, I think, with our tool is to provide a kind of an entry point and a low barrier to entry point to get people comfortable with this data and give them a place to really hone in on one explicit aspect of that data. So I think we're complementary, and I really think that this partnership is trying to kind of expose to others that there's ways for us to share data and move things back and forth to really support users however they want to be supported and in whatever platform they want to use. And so I think there's probably going to be further things we can look at between OneClick and EC3 specifically in terms of how we do that. But from my perspective, we're complementary. We're part of this ecosystem, and the more that we can be out talking about that, the more we can hopefully bring other tool providers and platforms along in that same vein.
Yeah, so this is not a competition about which one of us will be saving the world. I think we need a couple of other people to do this too, right? So,
exactly.
So maybe another thing, like to go to the train analogy, like we are company, we are for-profit company, moreover. So to go back to the train analogy, first thing is to get the train. In our train, you need to buy a ticket. I mean, and that makes complete sense if you have a high-value use case. That's the only way we could make this work because, we don't have taxation rights or this kind of income streams. We just wanted to make this work. And the way we approach this is that we try to find a way to make for people to earn money with sustainability services so you can sell them, right? So if you get an investment manager coming to you and that's important because if it doesn't make money for everybody, it will not scale. But the other thing is that accessibility matters hugely, right? So not everybody is able to make money. Either they don't know how to, or their market is not ready for it, or their customer is not the right one, or whatever reason, or they can't get it, approved or such like. So it's super important that we have also these free tools on the market. And, we have also one, fine, but there are a lot of things that need to be happening, and not just from us and from building transparency. We need quite a few people to chip in on this to decarbonize construction and manufacturing.
Yeah, and I think Panu, we haven't had a chance to really talk about this directly, so I'm just going to bring it up now, and I hope that's okay. But I think also the data side of things. I think what we've found or what I've learned since we've launched EC3 and the database is that anything we can do to democratize the data so the money can be made on top of it versus in its generation. In some ways, in terms of where in its accessibility, I would say, because there is money to be made in generation of data in terms of EPDs and how we publish them. But there's a value in how you provide open accessibility to the results. And we're sitting in that kind of role now with our database and continuing to figure out how to leverage that and expansion to LCA data sets or other things. But I appreciate the fact now that we're trying to figure out that data flow in a way that just deduplicates stuff and allows more people to access it. I think that's super important in terms of a part of where I think we're aligned.
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, give or take, the only reason for manufacturer to generate sustainability data is to get it to the hands of the specifiers and buyers. I mean, if they don't, there's probably something wrong with the data, right? So, so I mean, if you have a lot of sustainability data, but nobody gets to see it, I mean, I would be, scratching my head and wondering, like, is it really that good?
Yeah.
Great, thank you both. So we're talking today about riding the wave of AEC sustainability data, and the next question that I would pose to the two of you is, what are building transparency and one-click LCA doing to help people ride that wave? And Stacy, maybe I'll pass it to you first, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're taking an approach that, again, came from where I sat, where I was a non-expert, and I found a type of data, which was environmental product declaration, EPD data. And so that's what the EC3 database and the tool is built on top of, is that one type of data. And now we're actively in the middle of a project where we're trying to take the lessons that we learned from providing that EPD data in a standard format that was had verification layers through how type 3 EPDs are verified, and moving that to fill gaps where we don't have EPDs yet with a generic data set that would be available through the API for tools like OneClick and others in EC3 to put in to their platforms. It's called the Open Data for Climate Initiative. It's funded, and we should have those data sets start to be part of the API that folks like OneClick can use in the next 3 to 9 months as we start to generate it and publish it and push it through verification with Eco Platform. So it's a project that I'm happy to share more about offline, but I think for us, it's how do we continue to provide credible, verified, accessible data for use in our tool, which is a low barrier to entry tool, and also every other platform that could leverage that data. I think that's a responsibility that we feel we have based on our mission.
Yeah. So from our side, so we have about 3 things we are trying to do. So first, in terms of data generation, so there is manufacturers who generate the data. So the EPD process is really tedious. I mean, you need to collect inputs, you need to structure it, you need to calculate LCA, you need to create the document, you need to find a third-party verifier, you need to get it published, and many things can go wrong. And it's something that's really hard for people to pick up. I mean, it's much more demanding than building carbon accounting. So there we have made, I think, quite significant progress, and we continue to make more to streamline the process so that we can get, hundreds of people into publishing EPDs in short amount of time with just core engineering education. And we help to pick up the rest of the skills, and we put a lot of automation, a lot of AI, a lot of process and templates place to make the data generation possible. That's the first thing, so to generate more manufacturer data. The second part is education. So One-Click LCA's Academy is something we committed to do about 2 years ago or something. So we decided that, this is never going to work. Not enough people know about this. So we will train everybody in the world for free. And we are adding new courses and new languages and whatnot all the time. And point is just, if we don't have the skills, we're not going to do climate mitigation. End of story. So everybody needs to have those skills. We encourage everybody to get them, whether you get them from us or elsewhere. I mean, I couldn't care. You need to know how to deal with this problem. The last thing is how to make this all work in a design process. And there we, of course, integrate all the possible data into one-click LCA, and we are structuring the tool across project design phases. So typically you would use data in different way in the very early process versus later on in the process, where in the latter phases you actually compare products, and as Stacy mentioned, in the earlier phases you just look at material categories and they are a generic data set. More likely is the right way to look at. I mean, you don't decide whether you buy A or B suppliers' products usually in the concept design stage.
Yeah. So this is very inspiring, and I reckon everyone in the audience is probably wondering, they don't just want to, maybe they're probably wondering what they can do to help. So the question is, what can AEC pros do to help the industry ride the wave of sustainability data? Panu, I'll pass to you.
So I would start by advocating for this work in the organization you work in, and also on the projects you work on, and bringing evidence. This is an evidence-based industry. Like, people like and understand evidence generally. So this kind of data, it's great evidence-based. So we can do these 3 or 4 different things. We can find solutions. They are available. They are available from the suppliers we work with. I say we should do this, and then you see if you get people on board, and you can do some bit of background influencing work, depending, of course, how much power you have in the project. But it's better to prepare the ground, and to prepare the ground, figure out what value drivers it has, what value drivers sustainability has for others. So to get them on board, but it has quite many value drivers in most markets today.
Yeah, I would second that, and I think the way that I advocate for that is if we start thinking about at least the carbon side of things. Carbon accounting is just like cost accounting. Do it at every stage of your project. Do it whether or not the owner is asking for it. Like, to Panu's point of providing evidence, they don't know what they don't know. So waiting for them to ask for this, you may be waiting forever, because they might not even understand that there is an opportunity for them to look at this information around sustainability impacts and make positive projects or progress, and then actually, be able to promote that as part of their project success. So build it into what you do, show the evidence, like Panu said, and don't be scared. Start small and start focused if you need to. But we just need it to be top of mind all the time, just like cost is when we come to design and construction.
Yeah, and another way to look at it, because you're AC professional, so what you're really doing is you have a computer, you're drawing something, or you're calculating some costs or similar stuff, but all you do is you're going to be putting thermally engineered materials into buildings made with 1,000 degrees plus temperature. So you can feel good about yourself if you bike to work. You can be vegan. Maybe you even got an electric car. It doesn't matter. Your impact in professional life is 1,000 times higher, 1,000 times higher. That's because you're specifying thermally engineered materials to large buildings. And I mean, that's the thing you should mind. And that's where you need to fight your battles. I mean, because you cannot fight every battle. So if your kids need, sausages every now and then, you better give up on that than to give up on the aluminium facade.
I have to fight that battle, Panu, with my kids.
Yeah,
so
well, me too, right?
Comment.
Great. Let's actually transition to our 3 takeaways for the audience. So April, would you please pull up the slides? And Stacy, I didn't ask you in advance to share the 3 takeaways, but would you please share the 3 takeaways for our audience? We aligned on these before the show started, and I'd love for them to come from your voice.
Sure, happy to. I think, of course, number one, we started with this in the questions and answers, but data literacy is key. If you think about sustainability data, embodied carbon data as a language, we all need to be fluent in that language so we can talk to each other in that dialect, and know that we're saying the same things and representing the same things when we're talking about the data. So I think again, there's ways to get literate. We've talked about those, but that's kind of the foundational baseline is us all speaking that same dialect. The second is that the data should be standardized and automated. I think you heard from both OneClick and Building Transparency how we're both supporting that, either in the ingestion of data into a standard format and database, or the generation of the data in an automated way that makes it efficient and more cost effective. And the more we do that, the more we can actually get to data generation at scale in a way that supports its use to decarbonize things. And then the third one, I think, is we're all riding the wave together. Sorry about that, but maybe we can also say that we're all on the same train together, and we need to do what we can to build the tracks in front of the train, or ride that wave so that we don't drown or we don't fall off the cliff, depending on which analogy you're using. Because if we don't, we're going to miss that opportunity that we have to tackle one of the biggest climate impact sectors with buildings and infrastructure. So get on the train, get on your surfboard, ride the wave, ride the train with us, and do what you can to make impact.
Very well said. Thank you, Stacy. Let's go to the next slide, please. I thought we could take an opportunity to learn a bit more before we dive into the live Q&A section of today's episode. And I wanted to let you know a bit more about Building Transparency. It's their core mission to provide open access data and tools to enable broad and swift action across the building industry to address embodied carbon's role in climate change. They have a premier service. It's the Embodied Carbon in Construction Calculator, or EC3, which is a free database of construction EPDs and matching building impact calculator for use in design and material procurement. And you can learn more about Building Transparency by picking up your phone and opening your camera app and holding it in front of the QR code that you see on screen. And a link will pop up which directs you to Building Transparency's website, or you can just go to buildingtransparency.org. Next. Great. So OneClick LCA is a world-leading LCA software for construction and manufacturing. Design and construction teams use it to design and deliver net zero and circular buildings, to compare design options and find eco-friendly materials in BIM and the cloud. And you can differentiate and achieve carbon reductions, building certifications, and regulatory compliance with the software. And manufacturing teams use it to create, verify, and publish environmental product declarations, or EPDs, and to assess product carbon footprint and sustainability. OneClick LCA has a mission to power the makers of a zero carbon future, and OneClick LCA is doing that with intuitive cloud-based software to conduct LCA and generate EPDs at scale. Next slide. Thank you. So if OneClick LCA sounds like a solution for your needs, we have a business team of carbon experts, and they would love to provide you with a tailored demo to show you how our software might work in action for you. If you're watching today's event from Livestorm or LinkedIn Live, you will see a poll, and the poll is going to ask if you would like a OneClick LCA business team member to contact you to book a custom demo and to get advice about OneClick LCA's software. If you're dialing from Livestorm, you'll see a poll asking, do you want our business team to contact you to schedule a free custom demo of OneClick LCA's software? And if you would like to book that demo to get advice about decarbonizing or anything else, just click yes in the poll that you see in the Livestorm environment. We have a wonderful team of carbon experts with engineering backgrounds and scientific education and previous work experiences very similar to your own. And this enables you to have productive and intelligent conversations about decarbonizing either construction or manufacturing. So again, if you would like OneClick LCA's business team of carbon experts to contact you to schedule a custom demo, just click yes in the poll and we'll contact you to set up a call. Now on to our live Q&A, the moment you have all been waiting for. Let's go ahead and cut the slides here. We don't have much time left, so we are going to fly through the slides with very quick answers. The first question is from Forrest. Excited to hear about this partnership. Does this mean that when an EPD is uploaded to EC3, that it will be automatically forwarded to OneClick LCA and vice versa. Stacy.
I mean, I think, yes, the automatically forwarded word, we'd have to, I think it's getting into the details of how the API is going to move back and forth, but the partnership, and that's the technical part, but the partnership is to ensure that the data is flowing both directions. So as we have more EPDs in our database that might be coming from multiple verifiers and publishers, OneClick can access those on demand and leverage them within OneClick at the same time as OneClick's generating EPDs through their EPD program, ensuring that those are flowing automatically into EC3. So it's just that flywheel circle that we're really excited to continue to support with this partnership and expand.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stacy. Next question. Lindsay asks, does the data in the EC3 database come from manufacturers globally, or is it more America-centric? Stacy, this one is for you.
Yeah, and I'm so happy I get to answer this question because I think because we started in North America, that's where we started the data flow and ingestion. But we now digitize and pull from Okobaudat, we pull from ILCD plus EPD in Europe, we pull from Australasia, EPD Australasia. So we are pulling from every source that we know of when it comes to EPD databases. And then we have pushes now coming from some generators and program operators starting in North America, but with OneClick, we now have, I think, a global partner in EPD generation and push to us. So it is global. You can go and sort the data by region. We try to put that in a map on the front page. But if there's a database that you don't think we have yet, we're just talking to the folks in Japan. Let us know, and we're more than happy to make the connection and figure out how we can start to leverage our machine reading and our AI to pull the data in.
Great. From Rolf. Does OneClick LCA's EPD tool also make analysis on other impact factors like water or ozone depletion? Panu, for you.
Yeah, so we would cover in aggregate maybe up to 50 different impact categories, but none of the tools use 50 impact categories in single tool. So typically EPDs or sounds like they have about 30-ish impact categories, including the ones you mentioned. So we cover anything you find in going LCA standards.
I would just say in terms of the EC3 database, we ingest all those impact categories too. Just in our display of the data in the EC3 tool, we focus on GWP. But anyone that's accessing the API or the data can pull in the other impacts as well if it exists.
Next up, do EPDs prove that products are sustainably manufactured?
No, it does not. It quantifies the impact. So, I mean, you can have other sustainability issues. So if you look at just carbon, yeah, it will prove your carbon impacts. It proves that, right? But sustainability influences ethical questions. It includes tax dodging. There's many things that, can be naughty. So EPD is looking at certain things, and it will prove if your products are low carbon or not. That it will do.
Next question. What future trends do you foresee in the data landscape that could further transform sustainability practices in the AEC industry? Interesting. I'll let you, Stacy.
I mean, I think that what we're seeing right now in terms of, again, at the regulatory level, at the private sector policy level, and then at the folks doing the work, is this move to try to standardize and digitize. And so I think EPDs is where that's really starting because it's one source of data that we can try to tackle and prove that we can do that effectively. But we are now seeing this at the generic lifecycle assessment data level. We're seeing it at the building benchmark level with organizations coming together. The World Business Council for Sustainable Development just put out their interventions they announced at the Paris climate event, where there's interventions specifically around data harmonization at both LCA and product level, but also at the building level. So I think that's what we're going to see over the next 1 to 3 years is a big move for everyone to come together on that at all of those tiers.
I have 2 letters to add. AI. Makes it faster, makes it more scalable. We invest in it too.
Brilliant. Final question. Could you discuss the financial implications of adopting sustainability data practices? Panu.
data generation is manufacturers' cost, and yeah, it's clearly a cost. They invest in that cost because it gets them an advantage. So it's a cost of doing business in a certain way. The cost of adopting sustainability data management for construction projects are pretty marginal.
Stacy, anything to add?
I would agree with that, and I would like to actually flip it. I think right now there's a perceived cost. Well, there is a cost of generating the data, but I think there's going to be a cost of not generating it to manufacturers over the next handful of years as it becomes regulatory. So there could be a financial risk by not generating sustainability data for your products, which is a shift in how I think we think about this broadly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you both. This concludes our show. I will just offer a final reminder about the Digital Summer Sustainability Summit, which takes place June 5th through June 6th. Again, we'll have 2,000 digital guests. It's 100% free to register, 100% online. So whatever time zone you're in, wherever you are in the world, register and you will get access to some of the world leading speakers, some of whom you see featured here. And just please come. It's going to be a great time for everybody. And final slide. Great. So we're always happy to hear from you at OneClickLCA. You can contact us by writing sales@oneclicklca.com. Visit our website, oneclicklca.com. We have a great LinkedIn and also a nice new YouTube presence. You should check out OneClickLCA's new YouTube channel. We're very excited about this. Very rich content about decarbonizing the industry. And with that, it's a wrap. Stacy, thank you so much for joining us. Panu, thank you so much for being here today. And
Pleasure.
congratulations both on the partnership.
Thank you very much.